Fake quotes, that is, quotations that are attributed to an author that aren't actually by them, oftentimes by somebody else instead, are not something radically new, but they have become much more prevalent in this internet age. People post and repost these, sharing them without ever checking sources. They incorporate them into blog pieces and even into books. There's a vast variety of videos out there with fake quotes from important philosophers ranging from Plato to Aristotle to Epictetus and all the way on to the present. In this video, we're going to look at 10 of the most egregious of these fake quotes that are attributed falsely to Aristotle. We begin with this one that I'm sure many of you have seen before. Tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society. Is this by Aristotle? No, definitely not by Aristotle, and there's good reasons why not. There are variations out there, like tolerance is the last virtue of a depraved society, which is attributed to the evangelical preacher Dr. James Kennedy. Variations on this have been shared and reshared throughout, you could call it, the right-wing internet sphere, because this is really about promoting intolerance of different sorts. How do we know that this hasn't been said somewhere by Aristotle? Well, tolerance is really something that becomes an issue and a term in the modern period. It's not something that you would find in his texts. So people are reading it backwards in there. They're making him say things that Aristotle himself would not be inclined to say. Society is another word that Aristotle wouldn't be using. He would be thinking in terms of a city-state or polis, or political community, which is how we typically translate that term. Here's our second fake quote attributed falsely to Aristotle. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And what is this? This is a mishmash of the famous Delphic maxim, know yourself, and claiming that it's the beginning of wisdom. That's sort of an add-on here. Aristotle doesn't say this, and he wouldn't say this because he has a differing conception of what Sophia or wisdom would be, and it doesn't begin with knowing yourself, but rather has to do with the things that are unchanging. Are you an unchanging eternal element of the universe? I don't think so. So this is clearly a fake quote. The third one is also a kind of mishmash. The more you know you don't know. And this is kind of similar to what Socrates is saying in Plato's Apology. You know, he's claiming that at least he knows what he doesn't know, or he's wise because he knows what he doesn't know, as opposed to other people who think that they know. But this is not Aristotle again. This is something that is being attributed to him. I'm not quite sure why somebody thought that they ought to attribute this to Aristotle, but it's not by him. Our fourth one is at least rooted in something that Aristotle does say, but it's rather garbled and shows perhaps a need to talk a little bit more and say something that Aristotle himself didn't say. Happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim of human existence. This isn't completely wrong from an Aristotelian point of view, but Aristotle doesn't talk about human existence, and he doesn't say that happiness is the meaning of life. That, again, very modern terminology that is coming in. You could say that he does think that happiness is the purpose, the telos, the end of life, but he's not saying the rest of this. And you have to ask yourself, why would somebody get Aristotle mixed up like this? This fifth one, similarly, gets Aristotle partly right and then attributes something that goes completely against what Aristotle thinks to him. Character is made by many acts. It may be lost by a single one. In the case of this quote, we do have somebody who we can hang it on, a Reverend J.A. Hay, found in Great Thoughts from Master Minds. He was a Methodist minister, apparently. And why is this not something that Aristotle would say? I mean, character is made by many acts for Aristotle, or rather, habit is made from that, and then character is closely related to habit. Can it be lost by a single action? That is very un-Aristotelian, and to claim that this is Aristotle's position shows that one entirely misunderstands one of the most central tenets of Aristotelian ethics. Here's another very popular one, and this one has zero connection to Aristotle. There is only one way to avoid criticism: do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. Now, with this one, we know exactly where it comes from. ELBERT Hubbard's Little Journeys to the Homes of American Statesmen. And the passage runs, if you would escape moral and physical assassination, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing. Court obscurity, for only in oblivion does safety lie. And in Hubbard's later writings, he reworked the statement. So that's exactly where this one is coming from. Why couldn't it be Aristotelian? Well, Aristotle doesn't talk about trying to avoid criticism, let alone give you advice about how to do so. And he certainly wouldn't tell you to do nothing or to say nothing and to be nothing. These, especially the be nothing, a very modern way of looking at things that's not very congruous with Aristotle's own thought and writing. Here's another one that we know comes from somebody else. You will never do anything in this world without courage. It is the greatest quality of the mind next to honor. This is from a book by James Lane Allen called The Choir Invisible, and it's not that difficult to find the exact quotation from it. Why wouldn't Aristotle have said anything like this? Well, courage could be considered a quality, but it wouldn't be considered a quality of the mind. Aristotle would have considered it to be a habit that is established in the feeling or passionate or desirous part of the soul, and he wouldn't say that it's the greatest one of all the virtues, because there's plenty of others as well that are equally great or perhaps even greater. For example, justice or magnanimity. He also wouldn't say that it's the greatest quality of the mind next to honor, because Aristotle thinks that although honor is indeed a good, it is not the good. Virtue is something that is deserving of honor and is greater than honor. So to think that this is Aristotelian, one would have to be, as with many of the earlier ones, completely mistaken about Aristotelian ethics. This eighth one is an occasion for some humor. It is during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light. Now, this is by Aristotle. It's just not by our Aristotle, because it's attributed to a 20th century Aristotle, namely Aristotle Onassis. Not Aristotle the philosopher. And why would Aristotle the philosopher say anything so silly and trite and new agey as this? Speaking of rather superficial and trite sayings, this ninth one I think fits that bill. educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Now, we can find some statements like this in the 1800s that talk about educating the mind without educating the heart. Nobody's quite sure how this came to be attributed to Aristotle, but in the last several decades, it certainly seems to have caught hold. Why would Aristotle never have said anything remotely like this? Aristotle is quite interested in education, but there is no mind versus heart distinction in Aristotle. As a matter of fact, Aristotle, in his physical understanding of psychology, thought that the heart was indeed where the mind was located. So it wouldn't make any sense for him to talk about this. Aristotle also doesn't talk about educating the mind or the heart, but rather educating a person. Our 10th is a statement, the provenance of which nobody really knows as far as I can tell. Be a free thinker and don't accept everything you hear as truth. Be critical and evaluate what you believe in. This is clearly not from Aristotle, and it's attributed to him by many people who are going against the very advice that is being given here because they are accepting something as truth, namely that this is by Aristotle, and they are failing to be critical or to evaluate what they are wrongly believing in. Aristotle wouldn't have spoken about these matters in this way. Notice that we have imperatives being used here. Be a free thinker. Don't accept everything you hear as truth. Be critical. Evaluate. In Aristotle's text, we don't often see this sort of advice being given. In fact, if there is advice, it's usually one should do this sort of thing. It's not framed like this at all. Being a free thinker is a later idea. Aristotle does talk about being free, but not as a thinker. And of course, anybody can say don't accept everything you hear as truth. That's a truism. Being critical in the sense that we're seeing here is not how Aristotle would have talked about matters. So this one is clearly false as well. We have an 11th bonus fake quote, which we might see as not being as fake as all of these other quotes. No great mind has ever existed without a touch of madness. And this one is attributed to Aristotle by another philosopher who is coming centuries later, and that is Seneca. We don't have anything like this in Aristotle's existing texts. There could be the possibility that Seneca has not misremembered or made up something, and that there was a statement like this in Aristotle's texts that we've lost, but we don't really know. And to attribute it uncritically to Aristotle, as so many people are accustomed to do, is to, at least in a formal sense, engage in making a fake quote. But maybe we have a little bit of leniency with this one. As we finish up with our exercise of debunking fake quotes about Aristotle here, there's a few more general guidelines that I'd like to impart to you as advice or exhortations. So the first of these is to exercise healthy suspicion. Just because it's out there and attributed to somebody doesn't mean that they actually said that, and you should be suspicious of anything that doesn't sound quite right. If you know that something is a fake quote, don't repost it. And if you don't know that it's not a fake quote, you probably shouldn't be reposting it either or incorporating it into your work. This leads to the third guideline. Demand the sources. Demand it of those who are posting quotes. Say, where is this actually located in Aristotle's or Marcus Aurelius's or Plato's text? Where did they actually say this? Demand it of yourself as well. This ties together with the second. If you actually ask yourself, can I find the passage that this is coming from? And a real passage, a sourced passage, not just something that people are themselves repeating over and over without ever truly attributing to the person. The last thing I'll say is that I have drawn upon a website in doing this that I want to acknowledge called Sententiae Antiquae, and they have quite a few things about fake quotes, including a hierarchy of types of fake quotes. You should check them out. So this is the first in what are going to be, hopefully, an entire series of videos going through fake quotes on important authors.